Why are you standing in front of the door?
What is the context of this? We were broken into like twice this month. So we put this super high-tech lock here. And the tape, I think, is supposed to frighten them burglars as they walk in. Right, Amaris? Is that what we're doing? And then you can see behind this thick security wall, the cave, which is supposed to distract them with the entertaining story of the cave, which they'll remember they didn't buy, and they'll rush out to get it. And then this super scary axe, which I think is set up to fall on them and cut off their feet if they come in. And in addition to that, they're also putting in like a mag lock that's going to be impenetrable. And then like poisonous countermeasures.
So are they just going to break through this glass next?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Glass. Yeah. We'll put a sticker of an owl here, and then I'll scare away any bird invaders at least. And then Dave will be guarding the place night and day with his old-timey wooden golf clubs.
What are you up to?
Who
is this guy?
Absolutely terrifying.
I can vouch that that is terrifying. So please, don't break into Double Fine anymore.
And if the robber is watching us right now?
If the robber is watching us, I just want to say, you're dumb, nobody likes you. That's my personal take a bite out of crime campaign.
And then this morning I've been optimizing the light beams because, as I predicted, they're used in greater frequency than I anticipated.
But if there's like a limit to, then let me know.
Well, I'd prefer to operate in that you use it as much as you need visually, and I will continue to optimize it to keep it performant depending upon that usage.
Okay,
so
you're telling us there's no problem.
1,000 volumetric lights on a duck. That's what we need.
Potty duck.
That duck looked pretty sweet with some lights shining off it yesterday. Pretty sexy looking duck.
But yeah, I have them. Primarily with Mnemonic, what I've been doing is adding features to the Buddha engine that help benefit the atmosphere and mood of the game. We determined that volumetric lighting was a really signature effect. You know, it's used a lot in film to emphasize the, well, kind of the heaviness of the mood. So I basically, from the ground up, wrote this effect into the dynamic lighting that we already had. And so it uses a technique called ray marching, which basically means that from the camera position through the volume of the light, I sample the shadow map before I even hit the surface. So it's approximating, you know, little bits of atmosphere that would be reflecting the light back at the viewer, and where that's in shadow, I can drop that contribution. The result is that as you move the camera around and move through the atmosphere, you can see the volume that shadow actually consists of rather than just the flat projection that you normally see on a surface. It's very important that this is a dynamic effect because we can actually, in the engine, move some of these lights around. So I can select the light over here that's shining through these windows and actually move it, reposition it. We can add more light or less. We can use the light to shine on important objects and then also get the shadows from those objects positioned where we want them to be.
Yeah. The pattern. Just to make them.
So this is actually literally smoke and mirrors effect from game development. So rather than casting a shadow through the very thin slots on the window, we actually apply a grid-like texture over the projected light. So the shadows here are mostly coming from the edges of the windowsill, and then the shafts of light that are affected by the window panes are really actually just coming from a mask that's a texture that's part of the light. There's another thing that I can point out. This effect, when you get close and inspect it, is there's a graininess to it. That's actually an artifact of how I'm doing the math. the way that this effect is calculated is sometimes I end up with a bright pixel and sometimes I end up with a dark pixel. And so I add some noise in order to kind of hide that variation. And if we wanted a really clean science fiction environment, that noise wouldn't work very well. But it's perfect for mnemonic because we already want to film grain. It fits thematically, and it's one of those, you know, nice marriages of the intention of the design and the technology that we're using. So Lydia's doing most of the light passes, and so I'm working closely with her. When she wants a particular lighting effect, if she describes it to me, then I can get the math in the graphics pipeline and in the shaders working so that it can give her the effect that she needs on a given environment. But usually I like to give the artists as much of the freedom as they need. You know, and that's a talent of a good artist, is to be able to realize a particular vision while working within the constraints of the technology, even though if those constraints aren't known at the time of the content creation.
Like, I can show you probably the most complete one. So when you walk through the alley, through this door, right now you get the alley. Like, I'm trying to use as few lights as possible for like performance reasons, but also just for aesthetic reasons. So you can see like the geometry here is actually pretty simple, but there's like a combination of volumetric lights and like non-volumetric lights and spotlights and accent lights and particle effects that all kind of contribute to the lighting. So I'm trying to approximate this concept from Derek. Like, I probably won't be able to get exactly that, but this spotlight is using this texture, and I'm just kind of oriented. There's like two of them. They're kind of interacting with each other, and hopefully we can get like some interesting shadowing and stuff. Just the easiest way to show you is to change the texture to like just like a really normal spot. But yeah, this is like with really standard projection.
Wow.
In addition to lighting, I'm also doing mostly some post effects. You can drop back to that room with the doors at any point. Derek wanted an effect that ramped in that kind of resembled like a Rorschach effect, but also like faded out the current scene and faded in the doors. So you get this kind of thing, which is like, it's actually a combination of post effects and also particle effects that only render into an off-screen buffer that the shader is using. So, and then the shader actually does the mirroring and additional fading. Yeah, I love lighting, especially since it's black and white. It just kind of distills it to like
purest form.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice. But there's performance constraints too. Like, Matt came over and was like, okay, I approximately have 8 lights, but a shadow light is kind of equivalent to 2 non-shadow lights, and like a volume light is kind of equivalent to like 4-ish, depending on how much overlap there is. So I have to be pretty careful.
It has been kind of this back and forth where I implement the effect the easy way first, which is more expensive computationally, and then Lydia uses it in 8 different places, and the frame rate tanks. So then I go back, I review the effect, I take half a day or so to optimize it, rendering it to a smaller off-screen buffer and then scaling it back up when we need it on the screen. Whenever you render it something at less than native resolution, you introduce the possibility that the player could start to notice pixels, and you get the aliasing, which is the stair-stepping when the pixels are really large. In order to fight that, you can blur the image, but then you're losing detail. Or what I've been doing with our particular lighting is that I calculate the lower resolution version, but I do it twice per pixel. It's sort of like being able to render some of these effects at a much lower resolution than what the player would normally set it to be. By using those tricks, they won't know the difference.
We're really trying to mine him for scoops. Oh, God damn it, I can't stop thinking about it. How are you gonna cut to what you filmed? Because like when I have a conversation with someone, I think about what I'm gonna say before I say it, and so I plan out like 3 or 4 seconds ahead of what I'm doing, and what I'm saying right now, I just see it. So okay, what were the things? You're gonna cut to him talking about it. I think we're happy because we've been doing more than we thought we could do every day. Yeah. We keep doing planning for worst case scenario and doing more than that. So everything feels positive because of that reason, I think.
The content is huge. I mean, I don't have the final line count yet, but I mean, we've been only in production for a week and a half, and I think we generated close to maybe 1/5 of all the lines in Broken Age, which is insane. Maybe even more. At one point, we were going to have about half as much as Broken Age, which is crazy. But you know, the game is basically a dialogue-driven game, and so Brandon basically has a way in which we can work in parallel while we're recording. So in the old process, what would happen is there's a specific like set of dialogue pipeline that we have to follow. But in this case, because of the bottleneck, we try to find ways in which we could remove that. And so in this case, Penn would just write the way he would write. And then we would record all of them at the same time with all the different takes and things like that. But at the same time, simultaneously, that script will be ported over to Brandon, and he has this procedural process in which he dissects the lines and generates line codes automatically. And then that all would be folded together to the editing team, and they would start to piece them together. So that was a huge win. I think it may not be for every project, but I think that's something that I think we should try to integrate at Double Fine if possible, because it was a really liberating experience for me. And there's things, still kinks to work out, but I think the biggest problem that we'll face is managing the volumes and the relative volumes of the dialogue. The great thing about recording is that it's really easy to get a lot of dialogue in, but once that's in the game, it's going to be really hard to hear clearly when so many little guys are talking, and it's just going to be this huge mess. Let's say the player is chatting or player is typing, and then one of the character is responding, but what if another character is trying to step into the game or just accidentally happens to be there and they're saying their idle lines, which is why we have a lot of real-time side chaining. You want to be able to pop and highlight dialogue that comes in and out so that you can hear them. In the real world, if you just jumble 5 people talking at the same time, you can't understand anything. There has to be some kind of priority in place. And currently, we don't have any behavioral script to manage. I mean, I guess we do, but we don't have any mixing, real-time mixing tech that's in yet. So I'll have to write that in. It's actually a really interesting thing because it's when like artificial intelligence scripting and audio mixing has to kind of work hand in hand, which is kind of a unique thing for gaming. For example, have one character, one of the buds, a lot more active, and some other like quiet mouth who is super soft, but she needs to be heard. Well, how do you balance that? And also depends upon where they are. You have to do a lot of radius work. You're gonna have to do priority work so that certain lines they say will have to duck and sidechain out all the other lines. Out of the 20 lines, 3 of the lines will need like special high priority so that they sidechain other sounds even more. You know, a lot of interesting things that can happen. Also, that system could break easily if the AI changes too. We're like, no, he's actually not shy anymore. He's like super upfront, or he's not upfront anymore. He's way off in the distance. And then now we have to change the inner outer radius based on his behavior and all sorts of other fun things. Oh, the Boombox guy. He's gonna have a little boombox that he carries around, and so he's going to be sort of this like walking little cone of music emitter that goes around that's going to pepper the world with music, which is kind of weird, but Penn had this idea from the very beginning, so games like BioShock does it really well. They have like musical sources, but they're actually in the world, and it kind of populates the world. That's always fun. So whether there's a carnival or there's like a jukebox, they all have like cool music, and when you listen to them in the world, it kind of gives you a sense of immersion. And so the Boombox guy theoretically would do that. So you would have a cone, and if you get out of the cone, it would occlude and it would sound like it's coming. If he's turning around, you can hear his music, and it's like a little radio station that walks around. The creative direction that Penn gave me was for it to be Casio, old school, yeah, that kind of sound. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. So I did a little bit of research, and so the idea again is that it plays like really cheesy 80s. This is one of the tracks. Oh yeah, this is pretty good. It's hard to keep a straight face, but I need you to say, when Anna goes, got it. Got it. Got it. But you gotta have that attitude like the Boombox guy, right? Got it. You got it. You got it. It's gonna be so amazing. Oh, that's me. Actually, Penn wanted me to say, oh yeah, and yeah. And then, I don't want to spoil the song though. That's what was missing in the track right here. It just was a little too, it was a little too sexy, and so I wanted to make it a little more funnier. And so I think if you just kind of ham it up a little bit.
Okay.
So
I'll totally show the sexiness in the song.
A little bit. Yeah, I just need that little line, and
sure.
I think this track is gold, baby. It's gonna be, yeah. It'll probably just fade into obscurity, but it was fun for a while.
There are some parts that probably like would change his shape too much to have big tufts.
Right.
But like maybe at the shoulders, it would be really cool to have tufts there.
Yeah.
On his head, we don't want like big giant things like poking out like on his head. So let's just put all of the hair right there in his armpit, right? You know, it's like, hey, I'm hairy. No one wants to be my friend for some reason. You want to hang out with me? Oh, like like Homer Simpson style, right? Where it's like, and then over here, what is it? The matte graining, right? That's
in the end, yeah, that's right.
And then I don't even know what it looks like. Yeah. I've been watching Simpsons my whole life, and I don't know how to draw Homer Simpson like that.
What you doing?
So I'm working on Harry. He's our last rig. It's the last guy that we're working on. So he's gonna be an interesting one because he has to be hairy. So we somehow have to add some hair to him. The idea right now is Levi's kind of doing these little hair tufts and through alpha texturing, and I'll stick in these little planes into his body, give the illusion of hair, break up the silhouette a bit, and make this dude hairy.
I already gave him this texture, and he has this pretty much, or something like this. It's a big difference. Well, that's the thing that's good is as soon as we get them in there, if the texture doesn't look right, we can pretty much make it look like something a little more cartoony. So what does it look like if it's like big things like this instead? Oh man. Let's rewrite that dialogue for Featherbud, man. Featherbud's the best. Once we get them in there, we can work our way backwards, but it's just a matter of laying out all the... Oh man. Yeah, like sausages, right? That's so funny. I spent all this time on the other one, and I'm like, I kind of like this one better. Oh well.
Cool. Sweet. Hey Chad, it's kind of rainy today. When it's rainy, San Francisco slows way down, so a lot of people are running a little late today. And
The first movement blending, figured out some bugs last night. But working late, I got it to a nice state where it's starting to do the turns. So hopefully I'll get that checked in today.
Sweet.
So first I'll show you one that's looking good, I think. We talked about doing blending in the turns. So if you see the horse walking here slowly, and I start to turn him a little to the right, you see how his head kind of turns as he walks? That's one that we just started getting in that feels pretty good. It's a little odd from this angle, but if you're normally playing, your angle will be a bit more like this, where you see the horse's head. Previously, you wouldn't see his face at all. He'd just be facing forward. But if we flip the camera up, you can kind of see how his neck is turning a bit. And as he turns right, you can kind of see his head turn right. that one's working pretty good. That's probably a little bit much for the turn, but it's not bad. It is nice to kind of see your horse look at you. As I mentioned before, it kind of gives you a little bit of the character as you see its eyes, kind of glancing where it's going. One that's not working so good yet is our 180 turn. It's this one you see when you push the stick the opposite direction and it kind of runs around. You can kind of see there's a bit of a hitch there where it kind of will do the animation twice sometimes or kind of kick. We do some kind of special detection to see when it should flip the horse around. The problem is, as he's starting to turn around, it starts to decide that, oh, he doesn't need to turn around anymore. He doesn't need to do a 180. He's already like 45 degrees off. So it starts to blend out the turnaround animation too early. So that's kind of something we're going to revisit. We want it to be responsive. We want you to be able to like kick in a quick turnaround without, you know, having to see the horse slowly turn around like this every time you turn around. They're going to look at doing maybe a few other turns. So we have, right now there's kind of a 45 degree turn or 90 degree turn that the horse will do. And then kind of a 180. That was like the 90. And then there's like a 180, but it doesn't always choose between them too well. So we're going to look at maybe adding in a 45 and like a 125. It's really kind of based on which direction you push the stick. So if I push straight back on the stick, the horse will flip around 180. But if you kind of push 90 degrees to where you're facing, does the horse just start moving forward and turn, or does he do a quick animation turn? And then there's a question of, you start doing a 180 and then you press left and do a 45. Does it force it to finish the 180, or does it quickly let you blend out into another one? And that's where you get the kind of the weirdness with animations, because it's hard to imagine an animation where a horse started rearing up, turning around, and then halfway between, he kind of went back to going down. That would be like a stumble on a real horse. We're kind of limited by the number of animations we have. So it's always going to be a blend, and it's never going to look perfect with that weight until you start to get to physically simulated type of stuff. But you try to make it look good. I mean, the best you can do is to try to smooth it, make it so it doesn't look like there's pops, and then kind of look at what are players going to be doing. I mean, players can always take the stick and jam on it and just flip it around different directions and pretty much try to break your thing, and you can't really always make that look perfect. You try to make that look decent enough. But the main thing you're going to be doing is probably playing the game, running through the fields like this, and then just kind of steering your horse around. So getting that to feel right, you know, getting that to feel smooth and that your horse isn't sliding. And I think it's starting to get there. It definitely feels a lot better than it was before. And I think kind of that turning animation stuff really helps.
I think we're doing really great for the short period of time here. And yeah, so we got the boy. Matt worked on the jolt attack. So it's kind of like you have this magical book, it will charge up, glow with energy, and then you can bump the boy, boop, and it'll shoots out your wizard spell. It kind of going way off into the distance right now. And then we have a different one for running, and it's more of a jump. So, and you'll be able to do that in combat. So I can be like punching out in the front and back and turn it around, and then this thing's ready and we'll shoot it off, and it'll do a big explosion and stuff. So I think that'll be neat. It'll be fun. Yeah. It's gonna be pretty easy combat, but it should be fun to knock these guys around. And yeah, so just a lot of work still stubbing it in. I think tomorrow one of the goals is to be able to do a full playthrough with the whole thing with the team and kind of go over it and kind of point out things that people want to work on and just be like, oh, I don't like that. And we'll be able to do that kind of early tomorrow, and that's really cool.
So you've been doing effects work, right?
Yeah, doing effects for Deer Leader and Steed. Lately, I've been trying to add atmosphere to this room. Lee painted up this awesome interior office. So I'm trying to bring it to life. Normally with like an outdoor environment, you can do, like clouds, atmosphere, fog, random little flies flying around. But like with an interior office, it's kind of tricky. I can't exactly put like a campfire in there. So I got to get more creative. So we got like these, this fan blaze I started on that. There's a really subtle God rays effect in here. I didn't want to make it too strong because it would take away from the awesome painting. And this guy kind of flickers a bit, really subtle. And these guys I got a lot of voicemail apparently. But they'll all turn off, one at a time when somebody calls. Subtle clouds back there. Again, without trying to be too heavy-handed with the stuff for the indoor scene. And I mean, things like this help a lot, like the fan. This one is just a particle system. I think Adrian might have had something similar in the Cloud Colony. It was like a blimp with a spinning thing. I think that was an exported mesh that actually spun. This is just a particle that's spinning in space. But it's totally, as I'm learning, it's a total camera hack because it's actually scaled in 2D, so it's super weird. It's a really neat perspective trick, though.
Was that going to hold up if you do the when it zooms in through the?
Let's find out. Yeah, and I could probably, it's all in pseudo 3D, it's like 2.5D, so I can pull it forward a bit, maybe give it some parallax. So yes, it shall, hopefully. With VFX, this is so, it's like audio, well, it's very backloaded, because I'm really just polishing what everyone else has done. And normally audio's even after me, so that's man, they're extra crunching, So I try to be generous with them and courteous and get stuff done ahead of time.
I assume that once you get into more customizable propaganda, you're going to allow for a lot more suggestive configurations.
Oh yeah.
So it should be fun.
I mean, the nice thing about totalitarian societies is they're filled with phallic symbols.
Yeah.
So they're filled with phallic symbols.
Oh yeah.
I mean, industry towers are pretty much a statement, maybe a little overcompensation on the part of the leader.
Are you putting penises in the game?
Not intentionally. I can never say no to that question because I'm not sure what my subconscious is up to, but I am not consciously putting it.
We've made a lot of progress, but it's just like 2 weeks for this for a full game, which would be like with three eras. Maybe it seems kind of like a full game. 3 eras in 2 weeks is just kind of rough, especially when you're starting from like no systems for the. I mean, we have plenty of engine systems and stuff, but system specific to this kind of game, it's just like it's a lot of work. So I'm just thinking of how we can like cut corners and rescope stuff based on that. Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I think maybe cutting it at 3 would be a good idea. Hopefully, just like the game will give it, like what we'll end up with, will give it good enough impression of like what the final game would be like, and of course the final game will have a lot more writing, a lot more polished stuff, everything, a lot more options. That's the thing with game development is like you always end up cutting. And it's just like sometimes it's actually great. Maybe like we'll cut Era 3 and be like, thank God we cut Era 3 because geez, like what were we thinking? Like it's not even good. Like, that type of thing. Pretty much every single game I've ever worked on had been cut. Every single game. So you have deadlines, or you realize that something is just not good, or like, there's many reasons. It would have added more, more time certainly, but it would have added more closure and more fallout. Like it'll introduce like why your decisions were interesting in Era 2 or whatever. It'll kind of, it's a story arc. You're cutting a story. We'd be cutting a story arc. Because we do have interstitial text and we have like a full ending, we can sort of tell some of the story that way. So it's not altogether lost. It might be like that just we'll have to push it to an explanation rather than a full, gameplay experience for the time being. In the final game, of course, I would really like to have it told through gameplay. Let's hope.